Today we are going to study about the different types of chemical reactions. A chemical reaction is a process generally characterized by a chemical change in which the starting materials, those are the reactants, are different from the products. Chemical reactions tend to involve the motion of electrons, leading to the formation and breaking of chemical bonds. There are several different types of chemical reactions and more than one way of classifying them. So let us study some common reaction type. So the first one is combination or synthesis reaction. It occurs when two or more substances react and form one single product. Example: calcium oxide and water, when they react together, it forms calcium hydroxide. And this takes place in the presence of heat. So combination reactions are usually exothermic. That means heat is released. One very important synthesis reaction is photosynthesis, which is endothermic. Heat is absorbed. So it is unlike the exothermic reaction. Here heat is absorbed. For example, carbon dioxide plus water will give you C6H12O6 plus oxygen. That means it will give you starch. So it is a type of photochemical reaction that takes place in the green leaves of the plant in the presence of sunlight and chlorophyll, and carbon dioxide and water is also necessary. So that's how the green plants prepare their food, and it is an endothermic reaction. So we call it as a synthesis reaction, photosynthesis, synthesis by light. Next comes the decomposition reaction. It is a chemical reaction in which one reactant breaks down to form one or more products. Example: mercury 2 oxide, when we heat it, it breaks down to form mercury and oxygen. So 2HgO will give you 2Hg plus O2, and we heat it, therefore we also call it by thermal decomposition, that is by heat. Another example is by light decomposition, like silver bromide, like most of the halogens, when silver combines with halogens, bromide, chloride, iodide. So here is an example of silver bromide. Silver bromide breaks down into silver metal and bromine gas when exposed to sunlight. So we call this as a photochemical reaction, where it decomposes the compound silver bromide. So silver bromide breaks down into silver plus bromine gas, and this is initiated by light decomposition. So this is a good example of decomposition reaction. Thirdly, we move down to neutralization reaction. The reaction of an acid and a base or alkali is called neutralization reaction. So the product form is always salt and water. Now, whenever the acid and base reacts, they will always form salt and water, and it is always a neutralization reaction. Example: hydrochloric acid reacts with potassium hydroxide. It forms salt, that is known as potassium chloride, and water. If you look at the equation, HCl plus KOH will give you KCl plus water. That's a good example of a neutralization reaction. Example number 2, when sulfuric acid reacts with the base copper oxide, it forms salt, copper sulfate, and water. So H2SO4 plus CuO will give you CuSO4, that is copper sulfate, plus water. So this is a good example of a neutralization reaction. A neutralization reaction occurs only in the presence of an acid and a base. What we call as a base could be a soluble base, it could be an alkali. Number 4, precipitation reaction. Precipitation reaction is a chemical reaction in which two soluble salts in a fluid solution mixes, or when a gas is passed through it and one of the substance formed is an insoluble salt called precipitate. So whenever reactions occur between two soluble salts or solutions, an insoluble substance is formed. That insoluble substance is called precipitate. This type of reaction we call as precipitation reaction. Now, Example, when silver nitrate, that is AgNO3, reacts with sodium chloride solution, then sodium nitrate and a precipitate silver chloride is formed. So you'll see AgNO3, which is aqueous solution, plus NaCl, again that is aqueous solution. When they react together, precipitation reaction takes place. Precipitate is formed, that is silver chloride and sodium nitrate. Silver chloride is the precipitate. You can see it's a solid state. Then another example is when calcium hydroxide reacts with carbon dioxide gas during a lime water test. Remember, a lime water test we do by reacting slaked lime or calcium hydroxide with carbon dioxide, and we'll get lime. It's a lime water test. Turns milky. Insoluble precipitate. Why does it turn milky? An insoluble precipitate, calcium carbonate is formed, which is a precipitate. So here the precipitate is calcium carbonate. So that's a precipitation reaction. Insoluble precipitate is calcium carbonate. The fifth type of chemical reaction, is displacement reaction. Displacement reaction is a chemical reaction in which a more reactive element will displace a less reactive element from its compound. Both metal and non-metal take part in displacement reaction, meaning to say displacement reaction takes place in metals also and in non-metals also. So let's see the example of a metal. When magnesium metal is dipped into blue copper sulfate solution, then the blue color fades and brown copper coats the surface of the magnesium. It is because magnesium is more reactive than copper and displaces it from copper sulfate solution. If you see the reactivity series of metals, you will see magnesium is higher than copper. So that means it is more reactive than copper and it will displace it from the solution. So equation is Mg plus CuSO4 will give you MgSO4 plus Cu. Next is with in the case of non-metals. So if you see the halogens, fluorine, chlorine, bromine, iodine, here we talk about chlorine. So chlorine gas being more reactive than iodine displaces iodine from potassium iodide solution. As a result, the colorless solution turns yellow brown as iodine is formed. If you see the equation, Cl2 plus 2Ki will give you 2KCl plus I2. So here we see chlorine is reactive and displacement reaction takes place because chlorine is more reactive than iodine and displaces it from potassium iodide. So I hope you have understood this different types of chemical reaction. This is part 1. Some more chemical reactions we'll discuss in part 2. Students, if you like the video lessons, please share and subscribe. Thank you.